The war in Ukraine has evolved into a brutal test of endurance where artillery rules the battlefield. From the very beginning, both sides have relied heavily on heavy firepower to shape the front lines, but Russia, with its vast industrial base and decades of experience in large-scale warfare, has unequally adapted. Now, the Kremlin appears to be doubling down on one of its most formidable assets, the Uragan 1M multiple launch rocket system. The push for mass production of these modernized MLRS signals was not just an upgrade in firepower, but a deliberate strategy to overwhelm Ukraine and send a powerful message to NATO. The Uragan 1M is not a relic of Soviet engineering, although it shares its name with the older BM-27 Uragan. This system is a thorough modernization designed to replace outdated rocket artillery units still scattered across Russia's arsenal. Its defining feature is its modular design, capable of firing both 220mm and 300mm rockets from interchangeable containers. This flexibility allows commanders to adjust payloads and ranges depending on the mission, from massed area bombardments to precision strikes with guided rockets. In modern warfare, where speed and adaptability often mean survival, such versatility gives Russia a dangerous edge. Mobility is another key factor. Unlike older systems that required lengthy reload procedures, the Uragan 1M uses containerized launch pods that can be swapped out rapidly. Mounted on an 8x8 wheeled chassis, it can fire, relocate, and reload in a fraction of the time compared to legacy MLRS platforms. This shoot and scoot capability reduces exposure to counter battery fire, a deadly threat in Ukraine where both sides have advanced radar and precision strike capabilities. With the Uragan 1M, Russia can unleash devastating salvos, vanish from the battlefield, and reappear minutes later at another firing position. Russia's decision to accelerate mass production of the Uragan 1M is rooted in hard lessons from the war. The conflict has exposed the limits of Soviet-era artillery systems, many of which lack both range and survivability in a modern environment saturated with drones, satellites, and real-time intelligence. While Russia has deployed high-tech assets like the Tornado S and hypersonic Kinzhal missiles, such weapons are expensive and cannot be fielded in sufficient numbers to dominate the battlefield on their own. The Uragan 1M offers a middle ground, modern capabilities at a scale and cost that make sense in a war of attrition. If mass production succeeds, the consequences for Ukraine could be severe. Imagine dozens, even hundreds of Uragan 1Ms firing in synchronized salvos across the front. Supply depots, troop concentrations, and command posts could be reduced to rubble in minutes. Bridges, railway hubs, and fortified positions would be torn apart by waves of rockets raining down relentlessly. For soldiers on the ground, the psychological impact would be just as devastating as the physical destruction. A constant awareness that the next salvo could strike anywhere at any time erodes morale and breeds fear. This is precisely why Russia views the Uragan 1M as more than a weapon. It is also a psychological and political tool. In a war where propaganda is as critical as ammunition, unveiling mass-produced, modern artillery demonstrates resilience against Western sanctions. Moscow can point to factories churning out Uragan 1Ms as proof that its defense industry remains intact, capable of adapting and sustaining long-term warfare. In doing so, Russia sends a dual message. To Ukraine, that resistance will be crushed under superior firepower. To NATO, that sanctions have failed to cripple its military machine. Of course, the path to mass production is not without obstacles. Sanctions have limited Russia's access to advanced electronics and specialized materials. Yet, the Kremlin has responded by redirecting its economy onto a war footing, converting civilian industries into military production lines. Factories now operate around the clock, with defense contracts prioritized above all else. While production may not reach the lofty numbers suggested by state media, the mere fact that Russia continues to expand its arsenal despite unprecedented restrictions is itself a statement of determination. For Ukraine, the prospect of facing swarms of Uragan 1MS presents a nightmare scenario. Western-supplied systems like HIMARS and long-range precision missiles can strike back, but their numbers are limited. Ukraine cannot possibly shield every supply line, every city, and every staging area from saturation bombardments. Counter-battery fire can eliminate isolated launchers, but when salvos come in waves from dozens of positions, the defenses become overwhelmed. In such a scenario, Ukrainian strategy shifts from fighting for territory to simply trying to survive under relentless pressure. The impact extends beyond the battlefield. NATO planners are watching closely, aware that the Uragan 1M is not merely a tool for the Ukrainian front. In the long run, a large fleet of modernized MLRS gave Russia a strategic reserve that could be deployed across multiple theaters. The Baltics, Poland, or even Kaliningrad could see Uragan 1MS as part of Russia's deterrence posture, reinforcing the Kremlin's leverage in any future standoff with the West. The war has shown time and again that artillery dominance translates directly into battlefield success. Russia's advances in Donetsk, Luhansk, and southern Ukraine have often been preceded by massive artillery barrages designed to soften defenses before ground troops move in. By expanding Uragan 1M production, Moscow seeks to ensure that it never runs out of the overwhelming firepower required to maintain this strategy. This is warfare by volume, a grim reminder of how Russia has historically fought and won prolonged conflicts. Some analysts argue that the Uragan 1M could become Russia's most practical game changer. Unlike the hypersonic missiles, which grab headlines but are expensive and limited, the Uragan 1M is a workhorse designed for mass use. The fact that it can launch different calibers of rockets only adds to its utility. It can be equipped with cluster munitions, thermobaric warheads, or high-explosive rockets, turning it into a highly adaptable system for any type of target. The ability to sustain such firepower over time could prove decisive in grinding down Ukrainian resistance. However, the future of the Uragan 1M is not guaranteed. Mass production requires not just political will but also industrial capacity. The Kremlin has pushed hard to mobilize its economy, but questions remain about how many launchers can realistically be delivered each year. Still, even incremental increases shift the balance. If Ukraine receives 12 new Western artillery systems in a year, while Russia fields several dozen Uragan 1Ms, the numbers speak for themselves. Quantity matters, especially in a war of attrition. The psychological effect cannot be overstated. For Ukrainian troops entrenched along the front lines, the roar of incoming rockets already defines their daily reality. Adding more advanced systems like the Uragan 1M multiplies that terror. Each barrage shatters not only the ground it lands on, but also the confidence of those expected to hold their positions under fire. Wars are not won by morale alone, but morale can break far sooner than manpower. NATO, meanwhile, faces a dilemma. The alliance has already stretched its stockpiles by supplying Ukraine with advanced weapons at the expense of its own reserves. If Russia ramps up Uragan 1M deployment, the pressure to deliver even more aid will grow, deepening strains among NATO members. Some governments may hesitate, questioning whether supplying Ukraine with additional systems is sustainable in the long term, especially if Russia demonstrates it can keep replenishing its arsenal indefinitely. For Moscow, this is the essence of strategy, outlasting the West. Uragan 1M mass production is not about winning a single battle. It is about ensuring that battles can be fought endlessly until the political will of the enemy collapses. History shows that Russia thrived in wars of attrition, and the Uragan 1M was designed precisely for that purpose. It is a storm that can be summoned again and again, wearing down both armies and nations.